If you didn't know, many experts believe we're already in World War III, and the whole exchange began when Russia invaded Ukraine. So here we are today in a much deeper problem, as we're seeing obviously an escalation that will affect us in the United States. And obviously it's not just us, but all of NATO. Germany considers conscripting all 18-year-olds, all of them, amid NATO war fears. And even more so, since they are closer or actually on the front line, as we'll see in a minute, they see the seriousness of this. And I think many Americans also see the seriousness of this, but a lot of people have their heads buried in the sand since it's so far away. But the United States is a primary, in fact, the major contributor to NATO, and obviously we're going to be pulled into this war. And specifically, we see Polish and Lithuanian border leaders oversee military drills along that shared border, including the United States and German soldiers. Of course, it's NATO. And we see a lot of countries there right on that forefront, right on the edge of Russia and Belarus are preparing for this, because if there's an invasion, they're the first ones going to get hit. And this video is going to show you, stick with us in a minute, guys, that an invasion there is far more likely than you think it is. And if war does erupt, far more than Russia and Ukraine, it's going to happen here. NATO must prepare to defend its weakest point, the Suwałki corridor. I know it looks like it's pronounced Suwałki, but it's actually pronounced Suwałki. And more specifically, we're talking about the Polish-Lithuanian border, where Russia right now is amassing troops, right in Belarus, right next to that corridor. Lots of troops. In fact, some of the people I'm getting this from, 20,000 plus troops are amassing on that border. So the Suwałki corridor is also called the Suwałki Gap, is a strategically significant area and a huge concern for NATO. It's a very narrow 60-kilometer stretch of land on the Polish-Lithuanian border. It connects the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, with other NATO countries, specifically Poland. And here's the key. On one side, it's bordered by Belarus, and the other side by Kaliningrad. And here it is. A lot of leaders are calling this the most dangerous place on earth because of this. We're seeing Russian troops, as well as like some of the Wagner groups, which are mercenaries, amassing right here at the border. I mean, really amassing here too, by the way. We have NATO countries like Poland and Lithuania and the Baltic states up here, and Kaliningrad right here, which also is Russian territory. But look, there's a huge break in between the two, and that's the Suwałki Gap. And it's important to understand or to inject a little bit of Russian tactics here, because we saw the same thing in Crimea when Russia wanted a bigger freshwater port and they wanted to annex Crimea off there. As they actually sent soldiers in there, a lot like the mercenaries from Wagner, went into that area and basically made it so, let's vote Crimea out of the area. And without practically any type of major escalation or violence, Crimea became part of Russia. And of course, from there on, now we know the Russian invasion into Ukraine. So we're seeing the same thing. As we see Kaliningrad basically being part of Russia, separated from Belarus, it's just an excuse to move into that border. But then, as Ukraine was invaded afterward, what's their intentions here? It's going to be the same thing. Because it's important to see, if we take the same article and scroll down, look, it shows this one little gap right here. There it is, the Suwałki Gap, Belarus and Kaliningrad. And then down here, it's funny how they show Ukraine, and more specifically, Crimea. The international community refuses to acknowledge Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea. But that was their first step. They came in and took Crimea, then they invaded. And when we see this gap happening right here, which is right here, they may use this simply just as an excuse. Oh, you know what? We want to open this corridor up so we can actually send troops back and forth. That will simply just be their foot in the door. That may literally instigate or enact Article 5, which simply means one NATO country is attacked, all of them are attacked, and it's basically sworn together to defend that one specific country against Russia. But Russia can literally try to make it look like just an operation. We're like, we don't want to attack NATO. We just want this one little corridor. And we've always seen that, because look, this shows here, this is back in 2019, by the way. We see British troops, American troops down here, German-led troops here, Canada, Britain, all defending these NATO countries, the Baltic countries specifically, and they're even showing this corridor. This has always been a huge area of concern. And this is why we had this first article, Germany considers conscripting all 18-year-olds amid NATO war fears. Because more specifically, Scholz in the Baltics, Germany will defend every inch of NATO territory. And how is he going to do that? Conscription of every 18-year-old. Just in the United States, as we see, literally, recruitment levels are the lowest they've been in a long time, if ever. We're looking at conscription too. It's continuously pushed through a little bit in Congress, a little bit more here and there. It's basically rattling all around. And once there is some kind of attack, especially in America, if we have some kind of vested interest, it is coming. We're going to see a conscription in the United States, because there's no way we can fulfill this obligation too. Even though clearly the United States is the major contributor, especially financially, to NATO, they also want us to contribute troops too. So, guys, seeing Russia invade in Ukraine and other problems too, like China and Taiwan, which we'll talk about in the video in the next day or two, all these things will affect us here in the United States. Even if we don't see an attack on mainland soil in the United States, which may happen also, we certainly will be not simply just economically funding this war, but sending troops over there too. Germany's getting ready. Germany is looking at conscripting. How long until the United States does the same?